Everyone would agree that Mimi is bright, attractive, energetic, and loving. But every one of her romantic relationships have ended badly, even though she wants them to work more than anything. Longfellow's description of a similar young lady suggests why this is so. There was a little girl who had a little curl right in the middle of her forehead. And when she was good, she was very, very good. But when she was bad, she was horrid. Now, most of the time, Mimi is very, very good. But when she thinks her partner is looking at other women, or believes he's secretly having an affair, she reacts in ways that destroy the relationship. Either she walks out, or treats her partner so horridly that he abandons her. It's frustrating for her friends and family to watch her act in ways that destroy the very thing she wants so badly. They wonder why she acts so perversely. And so the puzzle I have for you is, why does she follow that same path again and again and again? In other areas of her life, she learns from her mistakes, and she adjusts her performance to get the outcome she wants. But not here. Why? Her puzzle may be quite different than yours. However, the method we'll use to solve it is the same as the one we'll use to solve your puzzle. So let's illustrate this method by using it to solve Mimi's puzzle, and then we'll see if we can use it to figure out the solution to yours. In an earlier video, I showed you this picture of an event from Mimi's childhood and asked you to experience it from the little girl's first-person perspective and from the perspective of her loving aunt or uncle, who happened to observe it from a distance. Now I'd like you to observe an event from Mimi's adult life, from the perspective of an observer who has unconditional positive regard for Mimi. It could be a supportive aunt or uncle, or perhaps her therapist. And then I'd like you to observe the same event from Mimi's first-person perspective. And here we're at a disadvantage, because only Mimi has access to that data, her first-person perspective. Now, when you do your personal research, you will be able to access this critical data directly. But here we're limited to the observer's perspective, the same perspective her therapist has. So like her therapist, you'll have to do your best to put yourself in Mimi's shoes. Now, the point of this exercise is to discover how cause and effect work in Mimi's subjective universe. To do this research, we'll observe the three-component sequence alternately from the first-person perspective and from the third-person perspective of an observer. The first component of the sequence is the antecedent or triggering event, which we'll call the nominal stimulus. Next, we'll observe Mimi's physiological response to the triggering event, the change in motivation or emotion. And then we'll study what happened in the space between the stimulus and the response. What was it that turned the antecedent event into Mimi's particular response? To give you a feel for this method, let's do a thought experiment. Imagine that you are her therapist or a kindly aunt or uncle, and we have unconditional positive regard for Mimi, but are distant enough to be free of the various distortion mechanisms, such as frustration, anger, and poignancy, that prevent Mimi from seeing how she contributes to the unwanted outcomes. So we'll start by attempting to understand cause and effect from our dispassionate observer's perspective, and then from Mimi's first-person perspective. By shifting between these perspectives, you'll see why Mimi has failed to solve this puzzle, despite her many sincere attempts to do so, even though the solution is obvious to most observers. So here's the setup for our thought experiment. Mimi and her husband are about to divorce, and they're giving their marriage one last chance by seeing a therapist. You and I are observers who have unconditional positive regard for her, and you know that she wants the marriage to work. But there's something that repeatedly provokes anger and jealousy that makes a loving relationship impossible. For her to get to the outcome she wants, she'll have to solve the puzzle of what's causing her to repeatedly sabotage that outcome. And here's a hint. Each of us are certain that our own interpretation of the things that happen is valid. That we see the truth and other people don't really understand. So here's the event that precipitated the current crisis. Mimi's husband didn't arrive home from work at the usual time. By the time he got home, she was in a fury and accused him of having an affair with a coworker. And the fight was on, leading to this last-ditch attempt to save the marriage. Those of us rooting for Mimi would like to understand the cause of her intense emotional reaction. The only objective information I've given you so far about the cause of Mimi's reaction is that her husband came home later than usual from work. That's the nominal cause of her reaction. The effective cause is how she interprets that information. When her husband didn't return at the usual time, Mimi wonders what he's doing. And this is not a good thing for someone with Mimi's insecurities. And why does she have these insecurities? First, and possibly most importantly, Mimi's mother was an incompetent parent who was overly critical and made Mimi think she wasn't good enough. And then there was this first romantic experience. Now let's see if we can get a richer understanding of cause and effect by viewing this episode from Mimi's perspective. So imagine that you're the grown-up version of the little Mimi. Or if you're male, you can spell the interpretive filter you developed as a child as little M-E-M-E. And imagine how this first romantic experience would affect little Mimi. Mimi describes it as her first rejection. But that's not a factual description of the event, but her interpretation of the event. In fact, what the picture shows is that the little boy is kissing the little girl on his right and not kissing the little girl on his left. Mimi is interpreting this situation from her particular point of view. But when the therapist points out the distinction between the event and her reaction to the event, she responds with some frustration. Of course I felt rejected, because I was rejected. The photo documents it clearly. Her frustration with the therapist is understandable. Anyone who experienced the event would describe it just the way Mimi did. Wouldn't you if you were her? But when the same event is viewed from a different perspective, different interpretations are possible. Observers who know little boys may not see this as a rejection of the little girl on the left, but as his attempt at a threesome, starting with the little girl on his right. Naturally, there are many other possible interpretations, and none of them, including Mimi's, is valid and complete. But Mimi is not open to alternative interpretations. She knows the truth, and those who already know the truth are not open to different ways of looking at things. But Mimi doesn't really know the truth. What she takes as the truth is in fact only how things look from her particular perspective. And her interpretations of the actions of her romantic partners are biased by her assumption. He can't be trusted, because as soon as he finds someone more attractive, he'll abandon me. Now let's review the puzzle we're trying to solve. The question that sets up the puzzle is, why does Mimi knowingly choose a path that she's already discovered takes her to unwanted outcomes? And the answer is pretty straightforward. She's acting as if her premise is true. Namely, that her partner will dump her as soon as he finds someone more attractive. And we really don't know that this guy is not a cheating bastard. What we do know is that Mimi has this recurring pattern of seeing all her romantic partners as cheating bastards. From her history, we can appreciate why Mimi is vulnerable to seeing things the way she does. The puzzle is that Mimi is an impressive young lady who has solved many difficult and complex problems in her life. Why hasn't she solved this one? Why doesn't she learn how to get what she wants here, as she has in all other domains of her life? Why does she remain stuck on an obviously doomed strategy? If you haven't figured it out by now, here's the mechanism of her trap that makes escape so difficult. And that is that the self-sabotaging premise is self-confirmatory. The consequence of acting as if her intimate partner will abandon her causes her intimate partner to abandon her. If he doesn't end the relationship, she will. The recursive relationship between what you regard as true and what eventually turns out to be true is often called a self-fulfilling prophecy. Later, when I show you how to use this principle in the service of your will, I'll call it suggestion. The recursive relationship between expectations and outcomes is a common feature of recurring patterns of self-sabotage. For example, Bernie's premise is that everyone he knows is trying to screw him. And it's a safe bet that if you knew Bernie, you'd be trying to screw him too. Because these handicapping expectations elicit actions that confirm the original premise, these beliefs become dogma. To solve Mimi's puzzle, it's important to understand that the primary mechanism of her trap is not so much that she misinterprets the actions of her lovers. For all she knows, each one might be a cheating bastard. Her error is her certainty. She is not open to contradictory information, and once she suspects infidelity, the fate of the relationship is sealed. So those of us who are rooting for Mimi hope she'll take the advice of the great Swami beyond and under. Curb your dogma.